Hello, welcome back to the Atlantis channel. Today I have Joe with us. Joe is one of the most, how would I describe you, Joe? You are embodied, but like you hold space for people in the most heart-centered, open, non-judgmental kind of way. Like of all of the people that I have breathed with or had hold me in this kind of container, I just feel so at peace with you. Like there's just like I just know that there's no way that I can show up that Joe's not here for.
Mm.
I don't know if there's a word for that, but we're going to find a word for that because that's what Joe is like, and I'm so excited. He's a breathwork facilitator. You are a somatic guide, and you have a certification with us. You are a cannabis assisted psychedelic therapist. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. That's right.
Yeah, which is so fun. That's a world that I have not entered into myself. And so it's really intriguing to me. I have a lot of just open curiosity around that world. So I'm excited to hear more about that and more of your story today. So yeah, welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you so much, Dakota. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really excited because today we are going to be, well, Joe, I'm going to turn on my student cap here for a minute. Joe is going to be talking about our nervous system and getting into the different levels of our nervous system and really kind of help us understand what is happening, and then pulling in why. Essentially, we're going to be talking about why that cannabis assisted therapy and why breath work is an effective modality to support you in, well, living, essentially. Right?
Yeah, exactly. How to live
Exactly.
life.
How to live life. Yeah, how to live life good, how to live life well. So yeah,
Yeah.
Joe, tell me what is it about the nervous system that just draws you in, that you are so intrigued by, that you love so much?
Mm. You know, what it was for me has been my own personal journey, right? As it is with a lot of us, with modalities that we resonate with or ones that have been super helpful for us. And while I've explored many, the nervous system education and regulation piece, polyvagal theory, has just been a complete game changer for me in relationship, as well as in relationship to other, I should say, and in relationship to myself. So I have gone down. I was actually a biology minor in college. I've always loved science. Science was always super exciting to me, and I've gone back and forth with things over the years. And basically, where I've landed is it just lands in my body. It just makes sense to me that the more that I can connect to and listen to the signals my nervous system is telling me, the better relationship I can be with my nervous system.
Yeah.
So the nervous system innervates, which just means it goes through all of our body, from our head, our face, into our chest, down into our stomach, and then it has all these other connection points. But really, what it is we have these three states that are the ventral state, ventral vagus state, which is basically you're in calm, you're in social connection, digestion is good. My goal is I basically want to live here. I want to live here all the time. Part of the human experience is that's not always the case, right? So I used to have a desire of, I'm going to be there always. Nothing's going to shake me out of it, and just this very aggressive, unrealistic, really approach. Then we have our sympathetic state, which is that fight or flight. A lot of people hear about that, right? Can look like anxiety, can look like raciness. And then we have the dorsal state, which is shut down, hopelessness. A lot of depression lives here. And basically we're not going to get into it too much, but I just want to provide a high level context for what I'm going to be talking about in a bit. But the vagus nerve essentially is the main nerve that is most related to your nervous system. And whenever you are dysregulated, which means whenever you are not in ventral, you're either in sympathetic or you're in dorsal, the vagus nerve constricts. And like I said, it goes from the base of the spine and the brainstem down all the way through your chest and down into your stomach. And for me, I personally feel it a lot in my stomach. It basically comes in and the nerves wrap around literally the stomach. And whenever you're dysregulated, it tightens, and this can have a series of downstream effects. And what is really helpful, number one, is to be able to identify what state you're in.
Yeah.
So something that's really helpful is whenever you're noticing that you're off or you're maybe feeling disconnected, some people may not even notice it, right? But the closer we can get to noticing, hey, I'm not feeling super either in my body or I'm feeling a little anxious, whatever it may be, just really closing your eyes and tuning in with yourself and just even bringing awareness of, okay, am I in sympathetic? Am I feeling like I'm in dorsal? And using that as kind of a frame of reference. And what that does is it just helps you get in deeper connection with your nervous system. Just asking the question and just recognizing, oh, I'm in this state right now. And basically, do I want to downregulate? Usually the answer is yes, because I want to actually do a quick sidebar. There's also blended states. So like play. Play is a good example of you're in ventral and you're also in sympathetic, right? If you're working out, if you're doing something active, like sympathetic's not a bad thing. I want to be clear on that. Dorsal is also not a bad thing. It's when we're spending too much of our time in either of those that problems start to arise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where
So,
was I?
you
Yeah.
know, good. I have a question. So
Yeah, please.
this dorsal versus sympathetic, how do you notice that in your body?
Yeah, so there's a few ways I notice it in my body, which as a facilitator also helps me notice it in my clients and in other bodies, right? Sometimes it's easier when I can see it in my clients versus in myself. Sympathetic looks like a very specific thing to me. I actually bring my clients through a brief exercise that I found super helpful, which is basically writing words to define the state that you're in. So common ones, and these are ones that resonate with me, is ventral is I'm okay. People are safe. The world is all right. Okay, that like if I can really resonate with that. For me, sympathetic, which this is like the neural pathway is strong here, Dakota. Is I have to. That if I'm
Oh.
noticing my thoughts are saying I have to do X,
Mm.
that is immediate signal to me. Oh, I'm in sympathetic. Um, and then dorsal to me, again, the most common one, or what are my thoughts? So another common thing of people I've learned from is your thoughts are a result of your nervous system state. So you can kind of backtrack. So, okay, what are my thoughts? And then based on that, let me go back. Oh, that means I'm here. So for example, for me, dorsal is I'm over it. I don't care, whatever. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just like, screw it. I don't care. Maybe I'll go into Instagram to distract myself. Maybe I'll go into video games, like whatever it is. Not that either of those things are bad in and of itself, but I know the pattern for me to be able to recognize like, oh shoot, okay, I am clearly not regulated right now.
Yeah, I'm
So
done.
yeah,
I resonate with
yeah.
that. All right, over it. Okay.
Just over it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, studies have found that we have to go. So when I say it's in a ladder, it's because they're in order. So
Mhm.
ventral, I like to think of as the bottom, sympathetic's in the middle, dorsal's on top, and basically you can't go from ventral straight to dorsal. You have
Mhm.
to go through sympathetic, and if you're in dorsal, you have to go through sympathetic back to dorsal. Now it can happen very, very quickly, but it's helpful for me to think of it in that way because basically when you notice you're in one of these states, you want to try to usually down regulate. And there's certain tools and tips and tricks that I really love, and I'll share some of them that I use almost every day, and it's been a game changer for me, Dakota.
Yeah, and this maybe seems like an obvious answer, but I'm gonna ask the question anyways because I'm curious what your response is why would someone care to be in that ventral state? Like they're like,
Mm,
okay, this is great, I understand that, but like, I mean, I think that people understand we don't want to be in that place where it's just like I'm over it, like checked out of life. Like no one really likes that feeling, but also we spend a lot of time there as a
hmm.
society, right? So
Oh
why
yeah.
would someone care to go through this process to come to that ventral state?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question.
Yeah.
So, because some people might hear calm and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to be calm." I mean, and this is I can speak from my own experience. I was like, "Life's short. You gotta go. You gotta make it. You gotta success. You gotta like. I don't want
Yeah,
to be
you're gonna
calm."
fail if you're calm. Like,
Exactly,
you're never
exactly.
gonna
You're
get
gonna be
anything done.
lazy. Exactly, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna wake up in 30 years and be like, "Where's my life?" Because I was
Yeah.
too calm. So yeah, I totally get that. And the reason that we want to be in ventral is because our body, literally our organs, our nervous system, obviously, but literally everything, our ability to build and grow muscle, retain muscle. I mean, everything functions better when we're in ventral. Your libido is tends to act better. Like literally everything functions better from a health standpoint. Now, if you want to get into the spiritual side of things, which I like to, when we are in ventral, that is the place where we are the most open to receive the gifts from the universe.
Yeah.
From ventral is when we can truly receive all that life has to offer. That is when we're in our place of power to manifest the most
Mm.
and to be in a state of loving awareness, as I like to say, something I bring to my clients and then myself. And when certain parts come up, and parts work is also a big part of my journey, and bringing loving awareness to these parts helps me essentially integrate that into my whole being and into myself.
Mm.
So it's hard to do that when I am racy or stressed or I have to, and I'm certainly not going to do it. I don't have the energy when I'm in shutdown. So that's really why you want to be in ventral. I often think of, especially if I'm in an altered state, whether it's cannabis or breath work or even just a meditation, of my higher self approaching these younger parts that tend to come up as they do. And if I'm approaching that part from this place of like buzzy, I have to come on, that part isn't going to feel safe with me. And honestly, if I'm in dorsal, I'm probably not even going to put the effort into doing that because it just feels like too much. So really, to me, that's like the physical benefits are tremendous, and then the spiritual, psychological aspects to me have been a catalyst as other things have expanded and grown in my life. And with that, I will end with something, and this I'll reference her because she's so great. Her name is Sarah Baldwin. She's where I've learned. She's a great polyvagal enthusiast
Mm.
and educator and trainer. And something that I really love is our literally the life that we're living right now, currently, wherever that is the life that our nervous system feels that we can handle. So if people want an
Mm.
expanded life or a big life, I want to do these things, that's great. You can have them, and there's no shame here. It's just a deep acceptance and awareness that your life is only as big as what your nervous system feels safe to handle.
Yeah.
So through these modalities, which we'll get into, that is how you can expand that window. It's commonly called the window of tolerance. I actually like the window of capacity, but
Mm.
it's a lot of people can call it different things. But it's essentially what is the swing of emotions that our nervous system feels is safe to handle.
Yeah. Side note, loving awareness. That is what Joe has. That's like clear back to loop to the beginning. That's the phrase. I knew it would come up. You're like the pure embodiment of loving awareness. You just I can in this conversation putting it into this, your window of capacity to hold someone else in their experience and in their emotionality is, for me personally, one of the largest I have experienced, in the sense that I can show up and I just know you've got me. Like you have that loving awareness. It's so beautiful.
Oh my God, Dakota, that's like one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're
That
so
is like
welcome.
the biggest compliment I could receive,
Mm.
is knowing that people feel that safe and held, because that is what I want. I know that that is part of why I'm here in this life. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And it makes total sense with this conversation and why you're so fascinated by this
Uh,
nervous
yeah.
system, right? Like the science and the spirituality, and it's all so beautifully interwound. So I'm curious, let's move into, so these modalities. So obviously this is very important to you. You're very passionate about this. You understand the science and the research, and you have this desire to support yourself and other people in increasing their window of capacity. And the path that you have chosen is as a cannabis assisted psychedelic therapist and as a breathwork facilitator.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, why those two things?
Mm. Yeah. Yes, I ask myself that question sometimes.
Yeah.
Rather, I used to. Now it's just a knowing. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say I started my spiritual. I don't want to say spiritual journey. I once learned that there was a veil, and the veil was lifted through other psychedelic plant medicine a few years ago. At this point, and plant medicine has been a big part of my journey. It continues to be, and basically what came to me in one of these ceremonies was that I am being called to like specifically support those who are not in that world as much. Maybe going down
Mm-hmm.
to the jungle and sitting with ayahuasca is something that people can't even fathom. Maybe the legality or the intensity of mushrooms, even though that's becoming more and more popular and readily available, is something that just still feels a little too far off. Cannabis is a much more universally accepted in most circles. You know, there's still people, and thankfully live in Colorado where it's even more accepted, but I've worked with people all over the country virtually, and it's not usually an issue, right? The stigma is a little less there with other things. It's you can easily get it. So it really came to me, and this isn't just one ceremony. This is really just like this is over a time period that I really realized that cannabis and then even breath work were just two modalities that are the most accessible and
Mm.
some of the most transformative. I think because of the accessibility, people maybe don't think that it can be as powerful. I get a lot of people that question the validity, or I'll say the healing capacity of cannabis because again, what do you mean cannabis? It's just weed. What's that? And then there's a whole another podcast we can go into of the history of cannabis and why it is what it is and the stigma and all that. But suffice it to say, it's really come through to me that I am like I have a lot of reverence for people that are doing any sort of facilitation of any kind, even if it's somatic coaching. It doesn't need to
Yeah.
involve modality, even like breath work or plant medicine, but just in general, right? There's a lot here for the world, and I think that our souls are here, those that feel called to show up in this way, to truly impact this consciousness renaissance that we are in the middle of. And for me, the thread that I weave in the tapestry that is this renaissance are these two modalities, because they're so accessible, and honestly, another big part of it is because they're so safe. That feels like a
Yeah.
really big thing to me. I've thought of people of older generations in my family and others, and even if they wouldn't smoke, it's a lot easier sometimes to get someone, hey, let's just lay down together and breathe, in a certain way. So yeah, that's those are why those two call to me so much. I had transformative breathwork experiences years ago, and I continue to. I still do. Now it's become kind of more normal, and I just had this embodied knowing of I meant to do this. I know that I meant to bring this forward, and now the more that I've been doing it, and now it's been I guess, yeah, it's been a couple years at this point. Every time I can feel it in my body, I'm just like, yes, this is it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why.
That's so beautiful.
Mm.
Why or how does breathwork and these cannabis journeys that you take people on, how does that help strengthen or increase that window of capacity?
Yeah. So I'll talk about them separately, and
Mhm.
then I'll talk about them together, because I actually learned how to facilitate breath work initially through just cannabis assisted breath work.
Mm.
And then I learned breath work by itself. So it was an interesting trajectory for me. So cannabis mainly is actually, and I'll say that most of what I'm going to say applies to both, which is why I love these modalities, but I'll speak specifically to cannabis. But cannabis and breath work are extremely somatic, meaning body-based, body-focused modalities. So it's They're very helpful in getting out of the brain and head and into the body. So breath work is a little more obvious, I think, of how we get out of the brain and into the body because we're so focusing so much on the breath. Someone might hear what I say that about cannabis and say, what do you mean? Every time I smoke, I get anxious, or I'm all in my head, or I'm blah, blah, blah. And I would say that's very common, number one. Number two, there's a lot of different reasons why that may be. It could be a past experience. Maybe you were out at a party in high school or college and there was a lot of stimulation and you were already drinking and you got past a joint and you just went somewhere, right? And your body remembers that. It could be that you're trying to do too much when you're smoking. I mean, it could even be watching a movie or doing the dishes. Even though sometimes I like to do both of those things, that's okay too. There can be sacredness in intentional cannabis use always. I'm a big believer of that. But really what it is the endocannabinoid receptors, those cells that take the THC and basically make it, that's the psychoactive component of cannabis is the THC. They're embedded within the fascia of the body. So the fascia goes from the top of the skull literally all the way down to the feet. And this is why it's very common in cannabis ceremonies that people will shake a lot. It's very, very helpful for getting at stored trauma in the body. So, trauma is stored in the body. We know this now. It's stored in cells. It's stored in organs even. So basically my role as a facilitator is, and the way that it looks is someone will smoke. I have an imbibing prayer, and then I usually follow it with a body scan to help people get into their bodies. Because especially when you're smoking and you're on that come up, it can get real racy. That's where breathing can come in, but also connecting people to the body. Then I bring that loving awareness, ding, 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 to what people are noticing in their body. So people, it's not uncommon. People will be like, oh, I'm going to think about this, or, oh yeah, there's this thing that happened to me. And my role is like, okay, let's go back to the body. Like what's in the body here? And to me, I've been able to access that level, of bodied awareness more with cannabis and breathwork than I have even with other plant medicines. Not that it can't be done and not that it hasn't happened, but there's just been other medicines I've been in that sacred space with. And while it's very powerful and profound, it's to me a little different than like actually noticing what am I noticing in my body. And really what this does is it is like a rep at the gym. So just like if you're doing breath work, again, this all applies. You are strengthening your connection to notice what you're noticing in your body. So many of us are so disconnected from our body that we may be feeling something and not even know it. So really what this does is, to answer your question of how does it increase our window of capacity, really even before we can even get to that point, it's just having a stronger connection with our body. And I think through our nervous system as well, of what am I noticing? What state am I in? Do I need to downregulate? Can I hold this feeling, whatever it is, right? And the more that we do that constantly, just back and forth, literally the stronger that muscle gets, and then the deeper we can hold emotions. So I'll end with what I always guide my clients towards, and when I'm working, whether it's in group or one-on-one, is finding the tolerable edge. So I'm a big fan of that. I used to believe healing's got to be hard and we got to push and we got to, go sit with some medicine and get just cracked open and just like, all over the place. There's a time and a place for that. Totally. It's why I am where I am. And taking a trauma-informed lens and a trauma-informed approach, it's really, really important that we move slowly and that we feel safe. So whether it's a cannabis journey or a breathwork journey, it's not that it's not going to be uncomfortable, but there's a difference between discomfort and, okay, I'm outside of my window, or I'm in pain, or I am actually getting close to re-traumatizing myself, or I am overwhelming my nervous system again, right? We never need to get there. I don't ever believe we ever need to go to that place. It may happen accidentally if you're journeying alone or if you're doing something else, and that's okay too. But it's like, I'm not about forcing or pushing us to go there. So I like to think of it as this little bubble where it's like the center is our comfort zone, right? There's a like concentric circles. There's a space in between, outside of that comfort zone, that's uncomfortable. I think there's a lot of growth there. And then around the edge of that is basically our window of capacity. So what I like to do is bring clients as much as they feel, as well as I do this with myself, right up until that edge, right? Maybe you just touch it, maybe you just nudge up against it, and then you resource yourself. And it's that constant back and forth that slowly it moves more and more and more. So that's how.
Mm. I'm just soaking this in. It's so good. How do you know when they're at that edge? I mean, that's
Mm.
an honest question right now. I don't know if that like takes us too deep into this conversation, but I'm just so curious. How do you know when yourself or when your client has reached up that edge without bursting over it?
Yeah, yeah. Now let's organically flow with this, Dakota. I'm
Yeah.
loving it. So, so it can look like a few different things. When people go past that edge, it's usually a more extreme state, I'll say, of being either in sympathetic or dorsal. So again, back to the
Mhm.
nervous system. So if I'm engaging with someone in a session, are they literally just like, I mean, insanity can be like an indicator. It can seem like insanity. It doesn't mean you are insane, but it can seem like racing thoughts that are like all over the place. It's like maybe your voice is louder. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm here. Oh, I'm here. I'm doing this. I'm doing, and you can just tell that the person is like really dysregulated essentially. So the barometer of how close are we to that edge and are we starting to move past it, to me, is just how regulated are they in their system.
Yeah.
Because another thing can be they're just completely shut down, not talking.
Hmm.
Maybe if they are talking, and to answer your earlier question too of how do I know if I'm a dorsal, another common one is the tone of your voice. So we're talking right now, we're engaged. I'm a little bit in sympathetic right now. This is kind of play to me. So
Yeah.
we're in like ventral, sympathetic, we're in social connection. If I were to talk to you like this, and I'm like, I'm not really sure how things are going, I am noticing that I'm this, you can tell, right? So it's just a more depressed, sort of deflated tone that can be an indicator that someone's in dorsal.
Yeah.
So when that's noticed, or when I notice we're starting to get to that edge, I mean, and I'm doing this constantly throughout, but it's just always remembering and reminding people to breathe. That is in cannabis ceremonies, in any psychedelic medicine ceremony, in breath work, even though you're doing active breathing, right? One of the best things you can do if you're noticing it's ever feeling like too much is just stop and take some, like, even if it's two deep, slow breaths.
Hmm.
That can be enough sometimes. Um, Sometimes I've had experiences where it gets honestly too intense. Cannabis can be too intense for certain people. And then you have other modalities and tools that we can use. I like CBD. CBD is really, really helpful for calming the nervous system. So if someone's going to engage with that medicine, I do recommend always having a certain type of CBD on hand, because as much as you can regulate, it can hit a point where maybe you start touching on some deep trauma that's you're just not ready to look at, or whatever it is. You can always back off, and that's where it's always, so just like breath work. If you're doing a breathing pattern and it starts getting too much, just stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
some slow breaths, shake, whatever it is. But it's always just getting into the body. Once I notice that someone is, maybe we're getting a little past that edge, or they're at that edge and maybe they just need to resource, right? Because it can look
Hmm.
different if someone's like, ooh, this is like really uncomfortable and I'm like kind of stressing right now. I can feel I'm elevated, but like I'm also feeling like I'm here and I'm present
Yeah.
and I'm like grounded, right? So that to me is like, okay, well then let's stay there. Let's keep going, right? So it's when someone, and the last thing I'll say with that is it's when someone is not present in their experience, when they're just kind of
Mm.
caught up in whatever it is, versus, oh, I'm noticing that, but I am not that. If someone can say
Mm.
that to me, then like, okay, we're in an okay place. If someone's just like, I'm like a 7-year-old and I'm tantruming, or I'm in this place, maybe there's a space for that too. Maybe we need to like,
Hmm.
I can show up as the parent in that spot. But really, that's what it is. It's like identification with the story or the experience versus like a noticing of it.
This is so good and so beautifully articulated. As
Mm.
you know, as someone that I hold people in this capacity, this is even helping me just, yeah, like understand and see. I have a knowing about a lot of what you're saying, but to put that language to it, it's like, oh yeah,
Mm.
okay, I see that. Like that makes sense to me. Um, and then I just want to kind of repeat back and just like reiterate this, as this has been so simple, but like I constantly get this reminder. It's like just coming back to the breath is about being present with yourself. And it's like what is so powerful about breath work and breath is that you get to show yourself that you are in control. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I can breathe. And that is something that you spoke to on your website with the cannabis journey that I thought was so interesting. You used the word agency. And like to be completely honest, like I'm surrounded by like, I mean, cannabis is like a bad word in my, you understand.
Mm.
Like
I
it's
do,
like
yeah.
not there's been no tolerance, absolutely. It's just it's different.
Hmm.
But when you say that word agency, I like realize I have this bias that if I'm gonna be on any sort of plant medicine, I'm gonna be out of control.
Mm.
That's like literally what I would say to people is like, oh, I don't do that. I like to be in control. So, like so to hear you and have this word of agency with this cannabis journey and then talking about you just can come back to your breath and with my knowing and understanding of what that breath is and what that feels like, it is like being able to come to the breath is just showing yourself, I am here. I am right now. I can handle this.
Exactly.
And it's just that one breath is the difference between being too far gone, too far being, in quotes of like, it's still okay, and being able to start to down regulate and be with yourself in your experience.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly right. One breath can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanna riff off that. I'm so glad you mentioned that
Yeah.
because that is something I often say of why I encourage and recommend cannabis. And honestly, breathwork again, and that's like the same for me, is the amount of agency that you have over your experience is
Mm.
unlike any other plant medicine that I've ever experienced or even heard of from others. Especially if whether it's too intense to do something else or cannabis can also be too intense. What I always say is if it's ever too intense, like there's certain things we can do, and that's where I like to stay with the eye covering because you have an eye covering
Mm.
generally. You're in the inner space. Is like how do we regulate? Maybe I hold their hand because touch can be extremely healing. A lot of our trauma is relational, so that's a whole nother topic. But it's like worst case, you can always just take off the eye mask and open your eyes, and now you're just kind of
Oh.
high. Um, and the like wild thing about cannabis, which I love so much, is you can do that, maybe resource a bit, maybe have a sip of water, maybe we talk, maybe you smoke again, or maybe you don't. You put on the eye mask, lay back down, do a couple breaths, and you could be right back in it.
Mm.
So it's really approachable, I think, for people maybe like you or people
Yeah.
others where it's like, because whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca, you drink it or you take that, you're now in it for the next 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And not that there isn't an amount of agency you can have there, but to me, cannabis is just such a gentle, loving way, again, to go to the spiritual side. She's a feminine energy. I think of her very much as a mature, divine feminine. A lot of
Yeah.
people think of ayahuasca as like the grandmother or the mother. To me, it's like cannabis seems like a feminine that's a little younger. This is my personal
Mhm. Yeah.
experience, and there's a lot there. There's a lot there that I actually won't get into, but temptress energy is like a big thing that I have found with cannabis,
Yeah.
which is why I think so many people can abuse cannabis and get tripped up by it. But really, it's that agency that is so powerful. Because the other thing is, I mean, I have had ayahuasca level DMT trip experiences with cannabis,
Mm.
mainly when I combine cannabis with breath work.
Yeah.
Um, and and it's shorter, right? You can have like a 3 hour cannabis journey, and then by the time you're out of it, you're out of it. At least with me,
Mm.
with other plant medicines, even when I'm done with the trip, there's still the come down, and there's like a whole thing, and um, nothing wrong with any of those others. It's just you can go really deep in a pretty controlled window. Like so, if
Yeah.
you're gonna lean into giving up control a little bit, like that's to me like one of the safest
Mm.
ways to do it. And then I realized I said this before and I didn't circle back, so I'll just say it now. The cannabis breathwork combined is just some of the most intense, I'll say, and powerful experiences. Generally, you can smoke a little less depending on the person, and it's very much like a breathwork journey. There's a build, and then we get to a crescendo, and then we kind of stop the breath, and then you're in this sort of space of you just did all this work, you just smoked a bunch, and you activated all of these things, and then you get about an hour to just be, right? Then there's no more breathing, there's no more, you're just laying down, eye mask covering, and you're just seeing what's coming up. It can be extremely profound, and I like to think of it as cannabis as the fuel and breathwork is the throttle. So you always get to either ramp it up or slow it down. Either way, these two modalities play together really well in a really powerful way. So this is like, I just know that I'm called to like bring this to the world here, and I just love it.
Yeah. I'm sold.
Great. When are we doing a session?
Oh man, yeah, I'll have to do a consult with you on that. But that is what you spoke to earlier makes sense to me now is you talked about how it's the accessibility of it, and it is like, I genuinely have a fear of being out of control. Like, I'll just name that. Like there's still much a fear of, oh, I don't know. I'm a mom. I've got responsibilities, like there's just, that's a whole thing that we could go into at another time. But that accessibility and talking about, that's been something with plant medicine as I've talked to people is like, oh, I don't know if I'm willing to go for 6 hours. Like that's terrifying. And to take that leap, like had for a long time, there was like, where's the middle ground here? And that's what you're talking about here is like, you're titrating the experience and we're building that window of capacity little bit by little bit by little bit,
That's exactly it. Yeah. And it's great for like cannabis journeys are great. I always tell people for, if you do maybe are going to do a medicine like a mushroom journey, or again, I'd say mushrooms and ayahuasca, but it could be anything, could be MDMA, could be LSD, whatever it is. Cannabis journeys are really great as like preparation. Be like, oh, I'm planning on doing a journey next month. I'm going to have a cannabis ceremony now to like kind of clean up the pipes, get really clear on my intention, like maybe build some strength a little bit to like get ready for that. And then similarly on the back end, sometimes people can have a big ceremony. Maybe they don't feel totally complete. Maybe it was really intense, or maybe it was absolutely perfect, and they just kind of want to like round it out. Again, a couple weeks later, I say have a cannabis journey then about that experience, and you can just really kind of, I think everything that happens in that journey just like comes into the body. So it's just like you said, I love that. It's the middle way. It's a way that's not fully, but it's a way that it's like a training ground almost. You can think of it in that way. So that's just why I think it's so powerful in a way that's not necessarily going to like blast you somewhere. It certainly can. Believe me, I've been there, but it's the only plant medicine I know where you can really titrate it in that way to help someone be met of wherever they're at. Whether it's control or trauma. Again, I keep coming back to trauma because, as you know, trauma, you have to feel safe to like go there, and you have to feel like you have agency, like you're in control, because a lot of people that experience trauma were not in control, that something else happened to them that they couldn't do anything about. So that's just why, again, it's like so helpful for the nervous system and for trauma resolution to know that you have choice and agency always with this modality, with these modalities.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart. This is so good.
So good. Thank you for having the space for us to talk about this.
Yes, absolutely. I have a couple more questions, just quick ones. You're up for it.
Yeah. Well,
kind of put you on the spot. So my first question, just a fun one. What are you listening to right now? What are you loving?
Ooh, what am I listening to?
Music, podcast, audiobook. Anything.
Yeah. So actually, it's so funny because this is a little bit of a new thing for me. In the last few days, I've been really into reggae.
Oh, there you go.
Which is not my jam. It's like not usually my jam. But I'm really enjoying the lightness of it. It's really light. It's really like happy. I'm a big country fan. I love country mainly because it's always talking about, and I don't really drink much, but because there's usually a lot of drinking in the songs, but I don't care. It's just like having a good time, hanging out, drinking, and I
Mm.
feel like reggae is actually kind of the same. And yeah, there's a lot of songs about smoking cannabis, but it's just like good vibes. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm resonating with recently.
Oh, very good. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so um it made me think like you must be increasing your window of capacity and expanding new horizons with music.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so glad you named that because that is because I remember I noticed I was like, I'm listening to reggae now. Like this is something I've never listened to, but I'm loving it.
That's
So
so
yeah.
funny. Yeah, it can happen. It can happen. Okay, next question. What book would you recommend to people if you're a reader? Maybe you're not a reader.
Oh no, I'm a reader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, ooh, is this just like open ended? Because like so many
Yeah.
books come to mind.
Open-ended.
All right, yeah. So I won't go too long, but I'm gonna name a couple because it
Okay,
depends on
cool.
what you're into. So if it's fantasy, because I love fantasy,
Yeah.
I'm gonna recommend the Mistborn series by Brandon
So
Sanderson.
good.
Oh my God, you
Yeah.
know!
Oh yeah.
Yes,
So
yes, yes. I just got the
Oh,
first three of the Stormlight archives. I haven't started them
yeah.
yet, but I'm about to. Have you read those?
I haven't. Nope.
Okay, yeah.
Sworn was
So Miss
my maiden voyage with Brandon
Yeah,
Sanderson.
me too. Me too. Okay, so then the other one I read after him was Warbreaker, which was really
Okay.
good. But Mistborn is just like,
Hmm.
that's it to me. So that's fantasy. Um, one of the most transformative books I've read in terms of my own spiritual path, I'll say, is The Untethered Soul by
Oh,
Michael
so good.
Singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. One of the other things, we didn't really talk about it here, but, and I'm going to say this, it's a little, what's the word? I don't know, some people may have feelings about it, but I'm a big fan of masculine and feminine polarity, and I'm learning more
Hmm.
and more about that. And David Dita's The Way of the Superior Man was also really big for me in that journey. And I will say that book with the caveat of it provided a great opportunity for me to take what resonates and leave the
Hmm.
rest because there's just some stuff in that book that I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh yeah, this is amazing, but there's a lot of good stuff there.
Hmm.
And then finally, because I'm just in the middle of it right now, I'm going to say Medical Medium's Liver Cleanse
Okay.
because it has
Yeah.
just been transformative in terms of like physical healing. And it's really interesting to learn about like our bodies in the way of like how we can support ourselves. And the thing I like about it is it's not just like scientific, he also brings a spiritual aspect to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to link to all of those in the show notes. It all sounds
wonderful.
amazing. I love to read and so yeah, thank you for sharing that with the listeners. And then the last question is where can people find you and how are you available to people right now? Like what are you booking sessions for? In
Yeah.
person, online? Yeah, just give them the deets.
Yeah, yeah, great. So I am probably most active on my Instagram, which is
Perfect.
joe.embodied. There's a black and white picture of me as the main picture, so you'll see. I post a lot there about nervous system, my own journey about nervous system. I'm actually transitioning it, I think, more to like sharing more about my experience because I'm
Mm,
really like enjoying that. I did a post the other day that was just about a reflection I've had about my own journey, and there was something cathartic about sharing it.
mm,
I'm just gonna, yeah, to be honest, I've had a journey with social media as I continue to, and it's still forming, but that's the best way to find out about the events that I do. I do monthly breathwork sessions in and around Denver. I also, and people can also work with me, which there's a link to my website there, one on one. I do both virtual and in-person cannabis and breathwork journeys.
mm,
As much as I love in person, I don't want people to be shied away from the fact of how powerful a virtual session can be. If it was cannabis, we could talk about the logistics of getting your own cannabis and all of that. But I just love doing it. And those are the two main ways for me. I have a 6 week program, a 3 week program, and a 6 month program that is
mm.
just really about, I blend all of my modalities and it's more of a support, I like to say. It's helping transform one's life to whatever they want it to be. So if you're
Yeah.
here and you know you want to be there, how can we develop a plan that works for you that's going to get there through somatic guiding, cannabis if you're open to that, and breath work. But really, the main thing people come out of working with me with is a much deeper connection to their body, to
Mhm.
themselves, and to their intuition. And that is my
Mhm.
hope and wish for really everyone on this planet.
So good. Yes, we have a mutual friend, Joe and I, that I had the privilege of hearing the story from. And so I just want to attest that this cannabis journey can happen virtually in the most beautiful container of safety and holding even a very intense experience. And so I just kind of want to second that. Does not have to be in person. In person's amazing, but virtual is can be just as beautiful too. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And
Yeah.
I want to speak just to that the nervous system knows. So just knowing that you have someone who's just fully with you and watching you, whether again it's virtually or in person, it makes a huge difference in your nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. And to some that may seem a little woo woo or like, what do you mean we're through Zoom? It's and I really can't say anything more than that. It's just something to be felt and experienced. And you just know when someone's got you, you can go to places that you probably couldn't otherwise go. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Just amen to that. It's the truth.
yeah,
Seen from experience. It's the truth.
yeah,
Oh,
preach.
so good. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same, just a little tangent. Like it's the same with I do breathwork exercises via YouTube and they're
Mhm.
great, but you even know like, but they're not live with me, holding me in this
Right.
experience. And so you can only go so far. It's that live, somebody watching you, whether they're with you or virtually, there is comfort and safety in that. And that safety that's the paramount piece there. So
Yep.
so good. Yeah, those links will also be in the show notes, all of the things. And so just drop down below. Make sure you guys, if you loved this, go reach out to Joe, tell him thank you on Instagram. That's where he hangs out the most, as well as just liking and commenting this video and sharing it with those who resonate. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Thank you so much, Dakota.